Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the March 24th, 2021 meeting of the Danville County Planning and Zoning Commission. Appreciate your attendance, whether you're in person or online with us. We begin our meeting in prayer. Divine Father in heaven, we thank you for this day and all the blessings of it. Thank you for the help you've given us and let us to be up and about another day. We pray at this time for all those who have lost loved ones in the recent shootings in other states, that you would bless and comfort and heal them. We pray that actions be taken to reduce this violence so we can all live together peaceably with each other. We pray for our men and women who are serving our community, country, and the armed forces. You would bless, protect them, keep them safe, return them home as soon as possible. Thank you for this community we live in, this country we live in, the safety and protection we enjoy, the freedoms we enjoy, blessing us with all those things. We pray for those that are administering the COVID vaccines. You bless them, that be most effective and efficient in administering that we might bring this terrible pandemic to an end. Pray the decisions we make here this day will be according to your will and betterment for those involved in this community. Continue with us in all things. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes, February 24th, 2021. Jeff moves we approve. And Steve, that's you, Steve, I'm sorry. Steve seconds. Question, discussion on motion to approve minutes. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you. Financial report. Steve, you have that?
It's in your packet. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Just as a target, after February, if you're looking at the percentages on the right, 67% is where we'd be as a target number for all category items. And you can see revenues are tracking just about 3% behind, and expenditures are approximately 2% over. And that's due to a 3 payroll cycle in January. So everything's pretty much on pace, and I'm glad to answer any specific questions. This does show the budget amendment that we did last month. Now is reflected in your budget line item, which is the far right category.
Terry moves we approve. Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve financial report. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you. Item D, construction sureties.
Yeah, again, that's just a report for your information, and as I mentioned last month, Maple Tree is complete. Hunt Farm section sidewalks are complete, just here recently. Both of those releases hopefully will be next month. We're waiting on an invoice from the city, but Maple Tree's been done, I guess, now for a month or so, and again, the sidewalks are now done in Hunt Farm, section 1, 2, and 3. And then the Foxgate subdivision is street lights, and the city's working on that right now. So hopefully we'll get all these released in the next month or two, and our cash bond list will be completely finished.
Questions on the sureties? Moving on to item E, subdivision approvals. We can take all these together, maybe once.
Sure.
You're okay to do that?
Sure.
Altogether?
Okay, please, you want to go over those?
Just hold it. It goes green.
Okay. The first plat we have is William Mullen and Morgan Hayes. Mr. Hayes is selling tract 2A to be combined with Mullen's tract, and then the Mullen's tract divided into tract 1A and tract 1B. There's a variant. This plat varies from the preliminary plat in that Mr. Hayes sold a little bit larger portion of land to provide the adequate road frontage on Parksville Cross Pike for both tract 1B and 1A. The plat's now technically correct and ready for approval.
Okay. Questions about this particular plat? Okay, hearing none. Number 2, Lisa, please.
Okay. Lost my notes. Got it. Plat 2, we've got Danny Lynn, who's got a tract of land out on Highway 52, Lancaster Road. He's dividing his tract into tracts 1B, 1A, both have sufficient frontage on Highway 52. The plat's technically correct and ready for approval. The next plat we have is AG&E Golf LLC. They've applied for the subdivision of a tract of land that is 1.153 acres located at 0 Lexington Road, Danville. The property is zoned ag. The plat's technically correct, ready for approval. You'll note that there's an access onto Lancaster Road noted in the plat, and that there's quite a bit of right-of-way for the Commonwealth in front of this parcel.
Steve, just, is that where they've built a new house?
Yeah, Lexington Road.
Lexington Road,
Yeah,
yeah.
Highway 34.
Is that where they built a new house there, or not?
This is a new building lot, I believe. It's
Oh,
being created.
building lot, okay.
Building
I know
lot.
there's a house built in that
Yeah,
area.
it looks odd, like Lisa said, they show this proposed driveway, but that is the state's right-of-way that kind of meanders in and out like that a little bit. So this lot would be created off the golf course lot on the south side of the old bridge,
Okay,
right along the road.
okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Lastly, we have William and Patricia Hunley have applied for subdivision of a tract of land containing 12.593 acres located at 0 Neild Road, Danville. The property is zoned ag. It's got sufficient road frontage. It's technically correct and ready for approval. It's one of many divisions on that parcel.
Questions on any of the plats being submitted for approval at this time? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve. Jim makes a motion to approve, Sam seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve the 4 plats as presented. All technical correct, no corrections need to be made.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All in favor? Votes unanimous. Thank you. Item F, public hearings. We have 3 of those listed. First is Rebel Recreations LLC, file a site development plan, amend tract of land containing 1.673 acres located at 1455 Minor Road, Danville. Property zoned highway business.
All right, I'll do the site development plan, and Kendall Wise is here with Vantage Engineering. This
Okay.
is their project. It's up on the screen, but you guys have it in your packet. But I don't think you have this exhibit in your packet. This is the aerial of the property from 2 shots here. The PVA now has brand-new aerials that they're allowing us to use. So those are our 2020 shots. We can see sides of buildings, and we can rotate the aerials around. But it's a good exhibit, because right here's the building that's built. There's Kate Drive, there's Minor, and there was a site plan done in 2013 to build 2 kind of identical 7,200 square foot buildings, one here, one here. This building's constructed, and this addition, this is a site plan amendment, is to bump this out 1,200 square foot, and that this building would grow a little larger to 12,000 square foot. So it'd be an addition to the building on the north side, and the building to be built on the south side would grow by 4,800 square foot. Everything's technically correct from the site plan review side. simply because it was done in 2013. Drainage and stormwater was all looked at then. Again, half the property is really developed out, and this site plan amendment is so they can expand a tad bit of that building's square footage. And you can see it on the exhibit that's now up on the screen there. There's the technical exhibit Kendall did. It again shows the addition in this location and this building being a little bigger at 12,000 square foot.
Are they still using the same driveway entrance to the main building?
Yes. Yes. When site plans come in, we forward them to City Public Works and the Danville Fire Department and ask for comments, and got no real formal comments. The fire department indicated they'd go out there and make sure the access was okay, and of course, that's all been built through the prior site plan and check for fire hydrants, et cetera. And then City Public Works inquired about drainage. Again, all that was sort of approved in 2013 with the original site plan approval. I'll be glad to answer any questions, and Kendall's here if there's anything he wants to add, or if you guys have any questions for Kendall, or curious what Rebel Recreations is. This is Corey. Yeah, he's here.
You want to, anything you want to share with us, Kendall, on this?
No, it's a slightly bigger plan for building than what we had approved.
Okay,
on 13th, but other than that, the parking layout.
okay. Corey, I'm sorry. Corey, anything you want to share on this?
I'm just here for some additional questions.
Okay, thank you. This being a public hearing, we offer the opportunity to anyone like to speak in favor of this zone change. We'd come to the mic and introduce yourself, address, and share your thoughts. Hearing none, if there's anyone like to speak in opposition to this proposed zone change, you have the opportunity to do the same. Hearing none, then we would consider this public hearing closed for the Rebel Recreation LLC zone change. This time, the chair is open to entertain a motion to approve or continue or disapprove.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Terry moves we approve. Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve as presented. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you. Public hearing number 2, City of Danville filed an application to rezone property tract of land containing 3.9404 acres located at 0 2nd Street, Danville. Request the zone change from 2-family to central business.
Yeah, so we've got 2 zone change requests here back to back, and they're going to seem very similar in nature. They're both downtown in Danville here. They're both zoned RM2, and they're both being requested to go to central business. First one is on the slide up here, is what we know is the KSD property. The former KSD property is Walker Hall. And what's going on this zone change, the city, this property was, there's a shot of the corner. You guys know the property. There's the zoning that shows RM2. Hospitals over here. All this RM2 kind of meanders downtown on the KSD property. And by the way, the RM2 district used to be, years ago, R2, which allowed single-family or duplexes. It was converted to GRB 2004, which again allows single-family or duplexes. Converted with the new amendment back to RM2, which allows single-family or duplexes. And as you all know, KSD's been there. They're a state agency, so they've been exempt from zoning. Clearly, this has never been a single-family development or a duplex development. And what's happened since recently, the property was replatted into 3 pieces, this being the Walker Hall piece. That property was acquired by the city of Danville, has recently been demoed, and the city, by resolution, has directed the Planning Commission to pursue a rezoning request. It's their request, but we filed the application on their behalf to make this central business. They're using the category in the zoning under the state law that allows the inappropriate zoning kind of determination that the zoning wasn't correct on the map. Really way on back. If you think about it, R2 going way back in the city of Danville, that's never been an R2 style development. It was original zoning. And again, KSD would have been exempt from correcting the zoning, and the staff at no time went ahead and fixed the map. So it's R2. The future land use map, which even though the applicant's asking for the case to be heard under the inappropriate zoning threshold, not the comprehensive plan compliance or flume compliance, did have it labeled as public. And you can see the flume shows all that as public. And of course, you all have the ability to weigh the request under the inappropriate zoning request or compliance with the comprehensive plan and fall on the flume. So that's everything on this case, and I'll just bounce through a few things in the staff report real quick. I pretty much covered page 1. Page 2 and 3 is the comprehensive plan review that we still put in the staff report that shows various goals and objectives that we think are relevant in the comprehensive plan. Page 4 and 5 should look familiar to you. We had city zone changes a month or so ago. A lot of the same text we put in here because the request is going from RM2 to central business, which is the downtown zoning district that we have pretty much all over downtown. And then this lays out the text for Danville. And then page 5, though, is something you haven't used, and I don't think since we've amended Article 9 in 2018 or the new zoning ordinance. You've seen the part that says future land use compliance, but the exceptions at the bottom of page 5 are what the applicants are requesting. And we have language in Article 9 of the comp plan that says there are certain things that are exceptions from basically complying with the future land use map. And one is correction of zoning map errors. Now, you could argue one way or the other, was that an error? Well, the RM2 was probably an error when it was first labeled, knowing that that was never a single-family structure or duplex. It's just been historically the zoning category that just laid on top of the KSD property. So again, the city would like to get this zone central business to make it developable into the future in a zoning category that reflects the pattern of downtown Danville. Page 6 is our development review provisions. Bottom of 6, guidance for commercial development. Page 7 is the requirement that you see at every zone change in Article 310.3E and 311.2 that says a general development plan comes in with a zone change request. Turn to page 8. The city chose not to submit a general development plan with their zone change request. They preferred to not put conditions on this zone change. They passed a resolution directing us to file this. So they've got future plans for this property. We're not really party to those. They've indicated if there are conditions or future development standards, they will try to execute those in a real estate agreement with a future buyer. But at this point, we didn't get any kind of concept plan or general development plan. And technically, the city didn't have to zone the property either. They're exempt from zoning, but they wanted it zoned because I think the desire is there'll be a different owner in the future other than the city of Danville that'll own that track right here next to the hospital. So there are no staff items of concern. Bottom of page 9 are your findings, and your cookie cutter motions are on page 10, which our attorney Henry Smith will help you with if you get that far. It's a different kind of motion than normal because, again, the criteria is either you all choose to follow the comprehensive plan directive, or if you feel the inappropriate zoning is a valid concern, then that finding would need to be flushed out in your options on the motion page. It wouldn't be all those options. It's kind of either or situation. And I'll be glad to answer any questions, and the city engineer just stepped in the room, Josh Morgan. He could answer any questions you might have related to the property, the demolition or future sale or whatever they can relay at this point in time. But the staff had no concerns with the zone change request. It seemed pretty reasonable. And again, the central business zone is all over the downtown currently. And going back to the zoning map, again, I didn't point it out, but you can see the central business is right across the street on 2 sides and then goes all over downtown.
Steve, is the Walker building, I think you called it, it remains there in the center area, is that the one?
What's that? Walker Hall was this one. I think the center building is still there. It's still there. I think that's Jacob Hall,
Is
yeah.
that a historic site?
I haven't.
Under historic
Well, this is all in the historic district, by the way, the local historic district. Whether it's on the National Register or not, I don't know.
Is it on there?
I'm not sure.
It's still owned by KSD.
Yeah.
It's there in the middle, so the plat was created, the 3 lots. This one was conveyed to the city and,
I'm sure Walker was not, because he got knocked down, so.
yeah, well, it's all in the historic district. All those structures are in the historic district, but the local historic district, whether they're on the National Register or not, I'm not sure.
And there's, down on the left side over there, is there any historic buildings down in that category? I don't recall of anything significant.
Again, I'm not sure what KSD's plans are. Again, when this plat came in, I knew they were surplusing that lot 3. Not sure what the future plans are for lot 1 or 2, if those are gonna be sold or conveyed. I think it's hard to think that this would be historic.
I was just curious.
But you would think Jacob Hall would meet that criteria, and it may be on the National Register, I'm just not sure.
Other questions for Steve?
Yes.
Go
How
ahead.
long has the land been vacant?
Not long.
Okay.
The demo occurred here in the last month or 2.
It's been this year.
Oh, it's been fairly, I mean, I think they just finished up moving the debris out in the last 4 weeks or less. And
Okay.
again,
I'm not sure when the building was vacated exactly.
Introduce yourself, please.
Josh Morgan, city engineer, city of Danville.
Thank you.
I'm not sure when the building was vacated, but it had been a while. Because
Okay.
I know when city staff went up there to clean it out, to prepare it for demolition, it had been vacant for some time.
I only asked for the sake of our finding that the initial zoning was inappropriate, so thanks for clearing that up.
Okay.
And the use of that building, just to inform that a little bit, it was classrooms and dormitories is what the use of that building was before it was demolished.
Got it.
Anything else you'd like to share, Josh?
No, as far as future development, the city has we don't have a concept plan for what that development will be. I mean, we will be selling that property is the plan for the city at this point. And we didn't put any conditions on the zone change because we plan on having pretty robust conditions in the contract to sell that will probably be beyond what we would even be able to put in the zone change. So that's where we wanted to approach those kind of items.
Any other questions for city engineer, Mr. Morgan? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Anyone here like to speak in favor of this zone change? Please come to the mic, introduce yourself, name and address. Hearing none, anyone like to speak in opposition? Do likewise, please. Hearing none, we would consider this public hearing closed for the city of Danville. Henry, I don't know if I jumped the gun a while ago with just approving that motion without getting it worded correctly or not on that first public hearing, but hopefully
The
we're okay.
first public hearing was fine. That being
Okay.
a site plan, it's more of a checklist type
Okay.
of thing. If there had been any waivers you granted from the ordinance, then we would have needed more wordsmithing, but it was fine.
Okay,
This will
thank-
need some.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I thought so. That's when it rang the bell that, hey, maybe I should have gotten the first one. Okay. Chair, it's open for a motion.
And we don't do this normally, but you might want to focus on page 10 of your staff report. It has the 2 options, and again, it's a different kind of motion than we've probably done on the zone change. And Henry can help you navigate that, choose all that apply in either option.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Normally, I mean, you normally require a general development plan before we approve these changes. And I understand why the city doesn't want one, because they want
Sure.
to make it open for someone else to use, purchase. So should we be approving something without a development plan?
You know, this is a unique situation, the fact that it was a public property owned by a state entity that was exempt. You've got the city of Danville that technically is exempt from zoning. They don't have to go through this procedure. They're choosing to for future sale and pick the zoning district probably on some confidential information or plan that we're not aware of. I asked that question, you know, what about general development plan conditions? And they said we want to move forward without attaching any conditions to this zone change request.
No, I understand, but should we be even considering it?
The zoning ordinance uses some pretty strong language that we have to have one. Again, the fact that it's the city of Danville, I think that gives you some leeway, I feel. And as you heard, they plan to execute some detailed maybe deed restrictions in the sale. Any other applicant, we would probably we would want a general development plan of some sort.
So we can exclude the city?
There's a specific statute that exempts government bodies from planning and zoning. So under that statute, we can let them out from under the condition this time.
So we don't have to.
We don't have to
Okay.
develop
All
a
right.
plan.
Other questions? Excuse me. Chair's open for a motion.
I'll make a motion
Two.
to approve.
Okay, thank you.
I make a motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and conditioned upon the general development plan conditions submitted by the applicant. Based on the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted 2017 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the following items. Should I read those?
Well, I think that's where Henry's gonna have to step in and help you, because it's kind of a pick and choose option there. So you take a stab at it, and then he'll probably have to help you put some wordsmithing on.
I'll just read it. And then
Sure.
Is consistent with the future land use map and is consistent with the adopted goals and objectives and has demonstrated the current zoning and designation is appropriate. Is that occurs? It should be that, right? It has demonstrated that the current zoning designation is inappropriate. Okay.
Yeah.
Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include the summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing, if applicable. I do all right on that?
Do you mind if I jump in with a few? This is atypical.
That's why I dressed up
Yeah.
today.
I'm going to add a few things that address the ways in which this application is not usual. No future land use map amendment is necessary because this map amendment corrects an error. The error is the same issue which makes the current zoning inappropriate. That is, that in the course of zone mapping and ordinance revisions, lost in the mix was the prominent existing use on the land and structure which render the current zoning designation inappropriate. Moreover, as Vince pointed out, the application conforms to the guidance for commercial development. It provides a site that has great accessibility for commercial development, and it minimizes the need for new curb cuts. And the need for a development plan is waived because the city is not subject to planning and zoning.
That's what you were going to say, wasn't it, Vince?
I would hope that we'd accept that with the current changes in wording.
Okay. Have a motion to approve?
So, I have a question.
Go, need a second.
Second.
Steve seconds. Now, questions or motion on the, questions on the motion?
So we're accepting all the contingencies? We're saying it meets all those instead of picking one?
It's not consistent with the future land use map.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely, that's the one I think is the strongest.
So the question is, Henry, are we accepting, putting all three of those, A, B, and C in the motion, or just one of
And I
them?
guess that's a question for the movement. Would you like to drop out the other ones and just keep the fact that we're approving this because the current zoning is inappropriate? Is that,
Yeah, the only thing we could do, because they're already exempted, right, from.
Right.
From even doing this, according to what we said, right?
that's correct, that they are exempt, and that's why we don't need a development plan. I guess,
Okay.
Commissioner Baird, you're pointing out that we've listed all three of those, future land use map, goals, objectives, compliance, and inappropriate zoning, and you're saying that maybe we should only pick one of those three? Is that,
No, I'm not suggesting that, I'm just asking.
okay.
So
I think-
let me jump in here, and of course, I put these cookie cutter motions in with Henry's help. The reason they're kind of all three in there, because if the denial was the option, this body might choose to weigh the flume as as the bar they want to measure this against, as opposed to the inappropriate zoning argument. The applicant's saying, hey, the zoning's inappropriate, but if you all thought the future land use map is still what should be complied with, then in that case, you might have chose that the flume is the category, or the goals and objectives may be the threshold to measure this case on. Interesting, in the option to approve it, it does comply with the comprehensive plan because the exception language is built into the comprehensive plan. The goals and objectives would be kind of a harder reach. There's some goals and objectives that may support this, not as many. Clearly, the argument was the zoning appropriate. That's kind of the base of this case, and as Henry mentioned, it's pretty straightforward on that issue.
I think you make a strong argument for C. You make a pretty good argument in the light of the fact that the flume was public, and at least for now,
Still is.
it is.
Still is.
So, those are, I think, just, I didn't know if we just want them all, and it doesn't matter to me. I'm
Yeah.
good with it.
It's a good issue because this is a unique kind of request, not following the conference plan or the flume, and again, the options are still there, and I think it's not consistent with the flume. The central business request would not be consistent with the public flume request if you guys were weighing the flume as your basis for review and saying, well, whatever the flume shows, that's what we think ought to be there. It's showing public, and the request is to go to commercial. So it does not comply with the flume. But, and again, it really, we're following item C, it really doesn't matter at that point. You guys are really choosing A over C, or vice versa.
And I think the issue is that we're harmonizing what Commissioner DiMartino read, which is the entire proposed cookie cutter motion, versus what I said, which was a little more tailored. If you're willing to accept just what I said, that deals just with inappropriate current zoning and conformity with some of the guidance in the comp plan. If you're willing to cut out the rest of the stuff, might that address your concerns? I think it sounds like it would.
You good with that, Vince?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And who's second? Steve, are you good with that? Thank you. Any other questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you. Public hearing 3, Stephen Francis Sutherland filed application to rezone property tract of land containing .06 acres, 128 Wilderness Road, Danville. Requested zone changes from 2-family residential to central business.
Excuse me.
Steve?
Should sound familiar, very similar to the case we just saw. And another kind of unique history in Danville that we'll kind of talk about here real quick. Folks here in the back, there's Steve and Francine sitting right here in the back. Their surveyor, Justin Wilmot's with them too, if we have any questions. You see on page 1 of your staff report, it says the applicants are Steve and Francine Sutherland, then it says the property owner HEA LLC, that's one and the same, so they are HEA LLC. The property we're talking about is right there on Wilderness. You can see right here on the exhibit, it's a building that's sat there many years. There's a picture of the building, kind of nice blow up here of the building that they own, right on Wilderness. Go through the exhibits, there's the zoning map, again, showing all this part of Danville zoned RM2, this part zoned RM3, and then there's the central business about 103 feet. This is central business. What's interesting about the zoning, again, this is a request that the zoning was inappropriate. The history going back, I wasn't that familiar with it, but clearly it's been a commercial building. It's never been a single-family dwelling or duplex. Going backwards, they've owned it for a number of years, been working on the building, but it was a different businesses over time, and I was told it was a grocery store way back.
In the 50s, it was a grocery store.
In the 50s.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the zoning when it was adopted at some point. Everything was labeled RM2 in this part of Danville when clearly there was a commercial structure there. There's the track, and it shows some parking spaces, and we'll talk about those and development conditions in a second. There's the future land use map, which gets to the heart of what we're getting ready to do, because this is a perfect example of our future land use map, this is labeled multifamily, duplex technically, and then it's low density, even though a lot of these are multifamily, and it's moderate density on a single family home, moderate density on some apartments, and you can just see multifamily, moderate density, low density, then of course the core of downtown is all labeled commercial. That's the future land use map right there, and I'm gonna explain some of the challenges of why it's labeled like that here in just a second. But going to again to the zone change request, and we'll leave it right there, and I'll just walk you through some stuff. Again, 128 Wilderness Road, the property's small, it's 0.050 acres, pretty small tract. Again, current zoning RM2. The Falloon designation is multifamily duplex, and I'll explain that in just a second. And they're asking for central business zoning to put a yoga studio in this facility. Their development conditions, and we'll get to those in a second, are very specific. They're not asking the central business zoning district to put any kind of retail use in, food services, or other things you can do in a downtown, banks and whatever. Their goal is to put a yoga studio in that building as the only use through the submission of their development plan. And then we get into some parking issues that we'll talk about in a minute. But on page 1 of your staff report, I want to talk about that future land use map designation paragraph right there, because this is kind of unique, and it's a challenge we've got right now. It shows it's multifamily residential duplex. That district actually doesn't exist anymore. That was converted to moderate density with the 2018 amendment to Chapter 9 of the Falloon. The problem is the actual future land use map is built in 3 GIS layers. There's a 2006 layer that was done. I think the Bluegrass ad was involved, the 2007 layer, and then we've started a 2018 layer. These things have to be stitched together, so we can't technically correct the 2006 layer at this time. It's a technical issue with the Bluegrass ad. So the category is actually moderate density. So the map should actually be this color, because we converted this red, we had a future land use district that was just duplex only. And as you know, that's not a future land use designation. So the old future land use map, these are your terms right here. But there shouldn't, as you can see, there's not a red color. Moderate density, so we go agriculture, moderate, low, high, and we changed that in 18. The map still shows these red parcels, which are technically duplex only. Now, as a future land use designation, that's more like a zoning designation. That's why we revised it in 2018. The map physically shows those because we can't get to the 2006 GIS layer because it's corrupt. So we're going to have to rebuild that, but not to worry, because we're going to relabel the whole thing anyhow, and we'll use the 2018. So this is a computer issue and a technical issue, but it shows up when you open the map. You see the red, and what we say, well, it's technically moderate density. It should be this color, but it's still labeled red, and you can't find the category. We have an archive layer right here, and you can open that, then you'll see it says duplex. So we had a land use category for a lot of years. It was just duplex only and single family only. And then we had multifamily. So we had single family, duplex, and multifamily land use. And we've simplified that to the density-based, low, moderate, and high. So this is a map issue, but I wanted to point that out. That's why it's worded like that on paragraph on page 1, that the map are currently being relabeled, and hopefully we can get that done this summer. So with that, we'll turn to page 2 of the staff report. Again, goals and objectives are laid out on page 2. Very similar to the prior case you heard. Page 3 has the Danville language related to Chapter 9. Future land use map language, page 4. Page 5, we're right back to the exceptions. And again, this would be a correction of a zoning map error. And then 6, at the bottom of 6, again, is our language that requires a general development plan. And then on page 7, you can see the applicants have submitted a general development plan to demonstrate that they can be compatible with the surrounding development. And I'll read through those items. There's 4 items on their general development plan. And again, I'm going to put this exhibit up because parking is something that came up. To start with, the central business does not require a parking standard. So if you're zoned central business, you don't have to meet an on-site parking requirement. You're allowed to have hunt and peck parking or use on-street parking. But in working with the applicants here, they thought it was important to get parking designated for this business. There's on-street parking, but it's used a lot. Their desire was to get people close to the business and get dedicated parking. So if you look at the site, they have 3 parking spaces behind the building. And going to their conditions, you can see that they've limited in condition 1 that this would be yoga fitness classes limited to 6 persons only. 2 says the uses will be just yoga fitness. 3 deals with their signage, would be wall sign only. And then 4 deals with parking. And what we worked out with the applicant was, even though they don't have to meet a parking standard, let's give it a shot and see what we can work out. And working with Steve and Francine, I explained to them the zoning ordinance allows for remote parking or shared parking as an option. So they've got a shared parking agreement with Melton's here. Again, they're gonna have 6 clients. They've got 3 spaces, but then there's an instructor. So 7 parking spaces was our target to try to achieve. They've got a shared parking arrangement with Melton's, but as you know, that's kind of different times of day, that could be busy. They also own a property over here, a duplex, and they have the ability to put 4 parking spaces on that lot, which would improve their duplex parking also. So they've got 3 that we can show on the site, a shared parking arrangement for the short term, and then if the zone change is successful, they're gonna develop 4 more parking spaces at the end of the alley. So you could simply park either behind the building, and I'm assuming the instructor would probably park at the other parking space, and you can walk just that short length down the alley to the business. So there's the parking spaces on the alley. And you can see there, the picture's not great, but they own that property right down here. And there could be 4 parking spaces there, 3 behind the building, and they have the arrangement with Melton's. And there's the on-street parking today. We kind of went out there, but typically when you get out there, there's usually cars parked here. But they'd have the ability to use on-street, but they wanted to make sure they had dedicated parking for their clients. So that's condition number 4 that outlines what they've agreed to, which says 7 customer employee parking spaces will be developed in the following manner. 3 constructed behind the building, 4 to be established either through shared parking or remote, constructed at 123 Center. And then the last sentence we threw in there is just a catch-all to make sure we get this done. It says a shared parking agreement and/or remote parking plan will be submitted to the Planning Commission as an attachment to the required zoning permit for change of use. So at some point, they have to get what's called a change of use permit to put the business in there since it's been renovated. That's a fairly modest zoning permit process, but we'd want to see that parking agreement executed with that zoning permit before they start the business. And again, Steve and Francine are in the back. The use would be limited to yoga, fitness only. And again, this is in the downtown area, and they're asking for central business, and there are no staff items of concern at this time. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Seems to use the rectangle, red rectangle size, is that the edge of the building? Is that basically, is it a foot away from the building?
What, this right here?
The width of the street line.
Yeah, that's the alley right there.
Yeah, but on the other side of the building, does it go up into the yard end, or is it just along the?
Look at the exhibit right here.
Yeah.
The building pretty much sits on the setback lines, but it's zone central business, so it has 0 setback requirements.
Doesn't require it, I'm just curious. So we are really talking about the building plus the 3 parking spots.
Yeah, and the parking spots are shown right here,
Yeah.
and they meet our requirements for the size of the park. You can see right there's 19 feet, and our parking spaces are 9 by 18. So you can see the parking spaces will work behind, 3 behind the building. And again, I don't know the history of the building, but again, I was told it's been a retail use for a long time. There's fairly good evidence it was never a single-family dwelling or a duplex. And again, the zoning would have been could have been corrected in several times over the years, but I don't know if we fixed the zoning map in that fashion in the past. But RM2 is what's labeled on lots of different structures over there, and this one clearly being a commercial structure dates back, as you heard, the 50s.
So it's historic in nature, but it's not necessarily on federal.
No.
Steve, you may want to come up here. I don't know if it's historic or.
I don't know. I'm curious.
It's not, Steve Sutherland, 474 West Lexington Avenue. It is not historic, and it's outside of the downtown
Any other questions for Steve?
It's got a history. It's historic.
Steve, anything you'd like to share with us with regard to this request?
Not really, it's pretty cut and dry. We've done our best to try to improve the building and make it look nice for downtown. I think we've done a pretty good job at remodeling it. It's been kind of a long project, we're doing the best we can for it. And we just think that it's better to have this zone change instead of trying to go some other avenue. Conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you. This being a public hearing, anyone would like to speak in favor of this zone request change? Hearing none, anyone like to speak in opposition? Go ahead, introduce yourself, please.
James Monroe, and I live at 321 East Main, and I own the property next to it at 315, which backs up to the alleyway. I've talked with some of the other neighbors who couldn't be here because they have to work. Our concern is the remote parking. We're fine with the yoga studio, fully support it, love the work you've done to it. It's the increased traffic that you're gonna have going down to the lots behind it, and is it going to, you know, make teenager plays in the yard, and I know they're not gonna have, you know, nefarious character. But, you know, it just increases the traffic. And I'm afraid it's also gonna devalue my property, having a commercial parking lot behind my property or next to my property. And I'm getting ready to, looking at renovating one of the homes that I bought with quite a bit of money to raise the value of the property in the area. But I'm not gonna do it, or I'll be less likely to do it if that property may be devalued. You know, in the past, there was some talk of possibly putting in a brewery and a bar. That got shot down years ago. So we're fine with it being yoga studios. Because my understanding, that's the only thing that can be, correct?
Correct.
You know, we're great with that. It's just the remote parking that we all have and stuff.
Okay. Anyone else like to speak in opposition or have a concern?
I'd like to rebuttal that.
Well, we normally don't do a back and forth rebuttal. We just let people testify what they want to say and go from there. But, you know, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
might suggest, I think our bylaws do provide for the applicant to have a final rebuttal at the end, not the back and forth, but just.
Right, fine, okay. Please, go ahead, Steve. I didn't mean to not, I just trying to, yeah.
And Steve, this is a better exhibit. I want to make sure, this one's not very good because I got the label on top of it, but your property that so the commission knows, this is your lot right here, correct?
Yeah, that's the 123 Center.
That's 123 Center, and this is your lot's just this portion.
So corner to corner from those two lots is 120 feet. And it's an alleyway, not a main thoroughfare in the city, so it doesn't get a whole lot of traffic anyways. So I would just say that that's a very deep lot there at 123 Center Street. And I guess it would probably be better suited as a piece of parking than it would be maybe another residence or something built there.
For reference,
Butter down, so.
this gentleman's property that just spoke, I guess for reference, which lots are yours?
Both of those two, you can say.
These two right here?
Yeah.
Okay, so these are your two, and these are the two, the remote parking would be over in this area. Again, the condition allows for remote or shared, and the desire was to develop remote parking on that lot.
And we do
I'll
own
leave.
another property there, on Center Street, and, as we've purchased properties down this alleyway, we've consistently made improvements to the, properties and increased property values on all those structures. So it's a benefit to the community to, improve those. The other one we built was vacant and abandoned for 8 years, and we just finished, we started it, we put it into the market, so we've definitely, best to improve property values in the area.
What's that?
Could you point those out again, exactly where the parking is supposed to be?
Okay, so this is their building here, and again, the red doesn't indicate their lot. This is a duplex lot, and there's a duplex, and there's some parking, and so the parking spaces would be back in here. And what we'd want to see is that they not be back in and out of the alley, that we actually define a parking lot where you could pull in, turn the cars around, and and then also improve the parking for the duplex, if that's what they desired too. But the parking would be, yeah, in this general location on this duplex lot.
And the sheriff's lot is where?
There, his two lots are right here, so what he's mentioning
Okay.
is that by putting parking here and the business being here, you're gonna see some traffic start to come back and forth down the alley that typically, with this 4 parking spaces.
Is it possible to make it, is it a one-way alley?
I'm not sure anything about the alley.
No, it's a two-way alley.
Well, I mean, that's another possibility, because the traffic would stop. If it was one-way west, the traffic would stop. And you would never be able to go down the street any further. You wouldn't need to go down, you couldn't go down the street any further, except for the 1 or 2 cars that might park next to the building, which would probably be the people who run it. Is that correct? Is that a correct assessment? I mean,
The alleyway goes all the way up to Alta.
I don't,
okay, well, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out a way to make those people happy.
Dumps into that alleyway too,
Yeah.
so.
I don't think we have any choice on making a decision about traffic flow and directions.
No, but I mean, it's an option.
Well, the city make that decision, but we can't.
I mean, I don't know, I just don't want to see the property that somebody owns, busy, but at the same time, to stop the growth. Maybe the city would become interested in doing something like that, and it's not the time right now to discuss that, but it also is a very strong possibility for sort of a settlement that would work well for both. I don't know if it would, but I'd want to look at it myself.
Anyone else like to speak? Hearing none, we would consider this public hearing closed. Chair is ready for a motion. Henry, do you need to do any wording with this motion?
I would suggest that if someone's inclined to make a motion in favor, I have everything necessary in order to kind of package that.
Thank you.
I'd be willing to let someone hazard a motion for denial if they, but yeah, the motion in favor would require a bit of wording.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question.
Yes.
Someone said that once we make the zoning change, you can't change the business. Is that correct?
You're asking the wrong person.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, somebody.
Henry,
asked-
you want to address that, please?
It looks like one of the conditions here is a limit to yoga and fitness use only. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, no, someone made the statement, again, I don't know how sure it was, that you can't change the business. So we make the zoning change, have a yoga fitness center, they sell it to a liquor store.
Right.
Can't do that, okay.
If the development plan, which is attached to the zone change, is why they're important, those get recorded in the courthouse and run with the land like deed restrictions. Those 4 conditions, if it's approved on them with those conditions, they stay on that
Okay.
property forever.
Right.
The only way they can be changed is the applicants or the future buyer have to come back to this body and formally amend those conditions to
Okay.
a public hearing.
That
And so
clarifies it,
they
thank you.
limited the use to yoga fitness only, so now it could never be retail or lots of things that are being sent to business. It's limited to that until someone comes back here and gets your all's blessing to change it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve. That property, as long as I can remember, has always been commercial. I appreciate the concerns of the parking. I think they've gone beyond what they need to do. They wouldn't even be required to do that. I also think human nature, most people are gonna take the shortest, easiest parking space. So I say those that are 100 feet away are gonna be the last choices. So having said that, I make a motion to approve the proposed zoning amendment together with the condition upon the general development plan conditions submitted by the applicant, which I think are very important as well. Based upon the testimony documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted 2017 comprehensive plan demonstrated by its compliance with the following items. Now, but Henry, again, I think the C is the most strongest argument here.
I agree with that, and I would just add that because the zoning is inappropriate, there's also no need for a future land use map amendment.
Okay, so we'll just go with as demonstrated, current zoning designation is inappropriate. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witness at this public hearing.
Have a motion?
Second.
And Jim seconds. Question or discussion on the motion to approve as presented? We good with that motion, Henry, as presented?
We're good with that motion.
Thank you, sir. Question or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you. Under New Business Advisory Committee report, nothing to report. Under Personnel Committee report, nothing to report. Budget Committee report, anything, Terry? Nothing to report. Any other new business announcements? Yes, I have a couple. Right. Last meeting, I asked Steve to serve on a budget committee, and Steve was already on a committee. We did not have Rita on a committee, so Rita, I was going to ask you to serve on that budget committee, and Steve take you off of it and try to share the work a little more equally as possible, if that's okay with both of you all. Okay, so I would like to make those changes on the committees, please. Rita to budget and Steve off of budget.
So then Steve is staying on tech review.
Yes. Any other good for the order? Hearing none, a motion to adjourn.
I second.
We need a motion to adjourn. Rita makes it, and Vince seconds. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.